my name is Hi, my name is Rutendo Nyamuda, and I am the host of In My 20s. I am so excited for today's episode as we interview poet, photographer, videographer, and all-round creative person, Lesley. Now, on today's episode, Lesley explains how he's had to adapt to life in lockdown, and especially as a creative person, we all know it comes with its challenges. But Lesley has even looked into other ways of how to be creative, like baking. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show. And so first of all, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on today's platform. We met through a friend and you are one of the biggest in my 20s, I'd say like ambassadors. You're always out there sharing our content. So I really just want to say thank you so much for the love and the support that you have given us and continually have given us. And to kickstart, I guess, Lesley, if you just give us a little bit about your background, tell us how you got to where you are. I know you are a photographer, but tell us a little bit about your career history. Where did you study and what are you currently doing?
Okay, so I'm Lesley Mphanga. I've got two other names, but we won't get into that one.
That's your name. What's your other name?
Okay, so Mkhuseli, Lesley, Lester. Those are the three names that I have. Mphanga is my surname. Got teased about that a lot in high school because when I matriculated, we still got our results in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So one of my friends was like, listen, after they spelled out all your names and your surname, there was no more ink. Yeah? So yeah, you're responsible for that. I'm a photographer by trade, self-taught videographer. I studied photography at the College of Cape Town. And to this, I've been shooting since around after I left college, which was 2011. Till this point, I've been doing the ups and downs, trying to work, trying to get my career up and running, not understanding what I need at the same time, not having a mentor to actually look at, or not knowing that, listen, there are ways of actually understanding what I'm doing. So I found out that a lot of my I've got an eye for it, but then the whole process of learning and unlearning what I had learned in college was quite interesting as I went along through my career.
That's interesting. And what do you mean by unlearning what you learned in college? Like, was it quite prescribed in terms of how they said, this is how you need to take pictures, and you trying to find your own style within?
So within learning and unlearning, there's always having to go back, because when we were taught, you get taught a certain way that, okay, fine, this is the way you think, this is the way you do things. But then when you go out into the real world and then you actually finally see that nearly about everything gets thrown out, and the experience that you learn, that is what becomes more important. Yes, there are the basics and the fundamentals that you have to have. Like, certain things will always stay the same. But then you find that through experience, going through life, you get to relearn new things, and you have to actually see, what do I take and what do I keep, and what works best for me, actually.
Sure, that's quite beautiful. That's amazing. And Lesley, as a creative, I know, we're in the midst of the COVID-19 lockdown. And as a creative, I know it hasn't been the easiest of things to adapt to. Before we jump into maybe the way COVID has affected you, if you can give me some insight on what your typical day-to-day looked like before COVID.
Okay, so before COVID, so I stay in Langa, one of the oldest townships in Cape Town. And before COVID, I would make sure that not even one, like 3 or 4 days out of the week, I'm not in the township. Because personally, the way my mind works, the whole confined space and the noise, for me, it was irritating. So I enjoy being out. I enjoy being out in nature. I enjoy socializing also with there are certain people that we can have certain conversations, because in certain areas you can't have too serious of a conversation, and people are like, why are you so serious and all of that. So there are certain people that I'm able to have the similar like-minded conversations, and it wouldn't only be initiated by me but by them also. So that versus now, where for the past month, if not more, we've been locked down and I haven't been able to have those conversations. It's been a drastic change. It's for the first 2 weeks, actually, I found myself just sitting doing nothing. Like, I didn't even touch my camera, which kind of felt weird. And I was just sitting at home, going through the motions, watching Netflix, watching something on YouTube. And yeah, it's kind of sent me into a somewhat of a slump and depressive state, until I was like, okay, cool, let me actually get out of the house and go and get essentials. And I found that that was the beginning of me realizing that I need to actually physically get up and do something. If I don't, I'd just go into a whole depressive state.
Wow. And as you're saying, 2 weeks indoors, I mean, we've gone, and I know a number of people can relate to this. It's like you go from, going outside or having the choice to go outside to I'm not leaving the house, to these walls are the spaces that I'm confined to. And it does take a very interesting kind of change into your daily routine, but even in your psyche. Because even without thinking, subconsciously, you're not outside. You're not being stimulated even creatively by the things you usually would be stimulated by, or even as you're saying, the conversations that you would usually have. You're not having them. And you said you're going into a little bit of a depressive slump.
Yeah. So I found that I just wouldn't. I would. There was even. I can't believe I'm putting this out there, but there was even a time where I was like, I wonder how long would I take without taking, how many days would I be able to go without taking a bath before I become personally disgusted with it? Yeah.
How many days did you settle on?
No, so I think it was, so I think it was after 2 days, I was like, actually some of the other people might be annoyed with, because you are within the, at home, I'm not quarantined alone, so I'm with other people. So I had to be mindful of that. So it was 2 days, and I was like, but then it might be not annoying to me, but then to the next person, it will be. So I've got to think about them.
Yeah.
But then sitting, thinking about it myself, I was like, I'd probably go a whole week, 2 weeks. Also, bear in mind that you're hardly doing anything. So there's minimal movement. You're sitting on a couch or a bed, so you're not thinking, I'm not active. So I'm not sweating. None of that is happening. So it's going to be slow and gradual. Also, your body starts to adapt. Your body starts to adapt to certain things. Even your own body odor. As soon as you start sweating, you don't smell how bad it actually smells. Because your body is now, your body tells your mind that, listen, this is happening. So instead of it being that intense, let's dumb down certain nerves. But then anyone that walks past you, yo, listen, you need to shower.
It's time. It's time. Oh, they even stop hinting, but then it's just please go shower.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you've also been kind of social distancing or self-isolating with your family. And I don't know if you've been having conversations with anyone who has been self-isolating by themselves. How have you found being in a space with just your family? There's no breakaway. There's no I'm going to leave the house and cool off if there is an argument or anything. How has that been for you guys?
So that has been quite hectic. You'd find that it's a matter of, there has to be that one that's listen, let's just hash everything out and let's rather have peace. and it's hard, especially when with me personally, because usually majority of the time I'm the one that will be like, okay, cool, um, let's just hash everything out. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about this and this and that. And yeah, because it's even showed me to the point where I'm just like, actually, after this lockdown, I need my own personal space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, regardless of everything, I do need my personal space.
Mm.
Um, because there are things that you just like, but within this cage, though, you
Yeah.
could at least be like, yo, I'm sorry that I initiated this. And you
Mm.
find that there are people that will never, they'll be fine with not speaking to you for a whole year, and
Mm.
they'll be able to go on with their lives. And you're just like, so you fine with it. And like, you also, you kind of have moments where you're like, why was I built to actually start asking questions like, why am I okay being silent with this person and us not talking, like us not talking?
Wow.
So yeah, it becomes interesting.
Mm. Relationships have definitely been an interesting one, and even connecting with people. Are
Yeah.
you being very intentional about like saying, I need to check up on so and so, check up on so and so, or are you kind of just letting things go?
So I've been, so for the first 2 weeks, I would just check up on people via messages and that.
Mm.
But now I've started becoming intentional with video calling people. Like, even
Mm.
if it's just going to be like, hi, how you doing? How you holding up?
Yeah.
Let's just see each other and like have a short conversation,
Yeah.
or it'll just be a hi and bye kind of situation. But then just having that interaction, because I found out as soon as I started doing that, because I personally am I'm a person of touch, so I like I enjoy hugs, I enjoy touching, and not being able to do that also with people that I enjoy being around has been quite difficult. But then
Mm.
video calling and yeah, just being able to do that has been quite good.
Yeah.
So aside from it, just aside from it, it actually helps you mentally
Yeah.
deal with everything that's going around, and also making sure that people around you are also doing like kind of coping.
Mm. But what's also interesting about what you said, like even physical touch,
Yeah.
essentially like one of your love languages. But even
Yes.
after the lockdown, you're not really going to be able to like run up to people and like hug them and be like hi, because we're still going to be in that social distancing phase.
Exactly.
So what is your
So
new way of going to be physical touch? Is it going to be like Bluetooth
no,
hug,
like
pen to pen?
honestly, I've actually I'm going to default to another of my favorites. So that's just being within nature.
Okay.
And so personally, that rejuvenates me 100. Like, I
Mm.
literally would be able to like just go out, go on a hike, come back, and go back to my isolation. Like, I would not mind. I'd be like, guys, I'm good. I don't need to see you guys. I don't need to touch you. I'm
Yeah.
alright.
Okay.
So I mean, that's been one of the things that I've also kind of looked at.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
then going back to your creativity, I mean, being a photographer, not being able to, because even if you wanted to take pictures inside your house, I think, after like day 3, you're like, what else can I take pictures of? Um, and in this, season of, even being in a creative, but also being at home,
Yeah.
have you found any other ways to adapt or try and create in a different way?
So I found out that I've started relearning things. So growing up, um, I didn't cook as much, but I
Mm.
would cook now and then. So now it's been a matter of, okay, cool, let me assist with cooking. Let me sit down, and I've found out that I enjoy baking also. So
Mm.
now every 2 to 3 days I'd bake and we have bread. Instead of going to the shop every 2 to 3 days to buy bread
Wow.
or buy like 6 or 7 loaves, I can just bake, and it's actually been quite fun. I've enjoyed it.
Oh wow! Oh well. Give us your baking recipe. What is the process? Because I won't lie, I don't know how to make bread.
So well, the ingredients that I've found that it's kind of like a family ingredients that's been sent through the whole family, right? From a mother's side, and we'll start with flour, baking flour. So we use I use a 2.5 kg baking flour, and then I've got yeast. I'll have a spoon of salt and more or less a mug of sugar. And yeah, I think that's it. And then I just mix all the dry ingredients together. Make sure that everything is nicely mixed together. And then after that, we'll add lukewarm water. So you make sure that the water is quite lukewarm, and then you just mix all the ingredients together. Before you even start kneading it, you mix all of those ingredients together slowly, just to make sure that everything is nicely mixed. Once that is done, then you can start the whole process of kneading it. So as you're pouring in the water also, you have to ensure that you don't pour a lot of water, so that your dough is quite it's quite kind of thickish. So when it's thick, it's easier to knead. And yeah, and then after that, after I've kneaded totally mixed it together, I'll leave it either in the sun or in a heater, next to a heater, for roughly, depending on how long it takes to rise. And then once the dough has risen, I'll knead it again a second time, just to kind of mix everything again together and let the yeast rise again, and then start the whole baking process.
Oh my gosh. So in all of my entire existence and in all of my episodes of In My 20s, I never thought that I would be learning how to make bread from a guy. So thank you for that.
Look, I've actually looked at this and I'm just like, honestly, personally, as being a guy, after lockdown, I'm literally going to be like, okay, cool. If I'm still single, like, what are you bringing to the table? Because like, I can cook, I can clean, I can bake. Yeah, like, yo, we can do everything. Yeah, I wash dishes, I wash my own washing, I iron. So yeah.
You're ticking off all the things on the list. I should start like an In My 20s singles group, and everyone just comes. It's called What I Bring to the Table. You just list everything that you're bringing to the table, and then you just, pair the peeps up.
Exactly. That would be quite interesting.
Oh, we'll see. We'll look into it. A new dating show by In My 20s. Yeah. And so I want to find out, from a photography perspective as well. Are there any communities that have been built where you guys are still interacting or connecting during this time? We don't know how long we're going to be on lockdown for as well.
Exactly. So I'm quite active on Twitter, and I'm active on on Instagram, well, on nearly about all these social platforms. And on Twitter, as lockdown was starting, one of the guys, his name is Cyril Zuma. He's a photographer based in Joburg. He started a 21-day photo challenge. So for the first 21 days, there was a theme for each day, and people would either look through the pictures that they have or shoot on that day and post their results, or post the pictures that they've been taking. And it's been quite interesting because there's a lot of photographers that I didn't know were out there, that I started following. There's a lot of things that I've been learning on how to how to take certain pictures. Also, I've been finding out that there's more insight and more to what I thought I knew about certain images. Wow. And even editing styles, all of that. So there's been a lot of sharing that has been going on, and it was just a matter of people being like, yo, I'm keen, and also just being part of that.
And I think that's for me anyway, I know everyone is going through the lockdown very differently. There are people who are like, we're on lockdown, not going to do anything, let me relax, this is my holiday. And then there are other people who are like, let me try and create something. Or for you, even baking is not anywhere near photography. If you said you're learning videography skills, I'd be like, okay, cool, but it's creating or using creativity in a different way, and making bread is creating. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that we forget. So people think that when you are creative, you're only bound to creating in a certain way. I honestly wish that I was able to sculpt, because at this point I'd be going crazy. Because I remember when I was still in college, I really enjoyed pottery, and I know that that's one thing that after this lockdown I'm really going to take up ceramics again and like just see how can I do that.
Yeah.
Because I found out that there's different ways that you can create,
Mm.
and it depends on how much you actually want to.
I like that. I really like that. I'm actually challenged by this. I think I need to find something that's out of the media space that I can work with. Everything I do is media related.
So usually it's something, look at something like what would I enjoy doing, and how can I either find a way of doing that or find people that have done the same thing. Because you find that people are like, but yeah, I don't know how, I enjoy reading, but I don't know how to write.
Mm.
Cool. Start somewhere though. Like
Yeah.
maybe start just writing in your journal, like
Mm.
every day, writing at least maybe 1 page, and
Mm.
then find creative ways of writing and find what are you interested within writing, because you find that what you read and what you enjoy writing might be actually two different things.
Wow.
So it's become one of those. So like I know that I enjoy the kind of pictures that I enjoy. I enjoy documentary photography more than anything else. I enjoy documenting something. So going to clubs and taking pictures, or taking pictures at an event, for me it feels very crammed up, and everything is just within one space. But if I had to take pictures in Cape Town, and then I know that from here I'm gonna go move to a certain other place, take pictures there and move. So that whole process for me would be that would be more enjoyable
Mm.
than just knowing that I'm going to go to this certain place, take pictures, and then that's done. I need to give the images to a client, or I need to post the images.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. But that is so true. I feel a little bit triggered and challenged at the same time. I've been saying I want to write a book for the longest time and I haven't done it. So we'll see. We'll see.
Start by writing short stories,
Okay.
or capturing short moments. And
Mm.
you know the funniest thing is that by starting to capture those short moments, you actually start to see that it all starts to connect.
Love it.
May connect, and or it may just be a book of different short stories. So there's multiple of formats out there. It's just that at moments we just don't take the time to find out what do we resonate most with.
Yo, I'm on it. I'm on it. Challenge accepted. It might not be a book, but just trust. I'll tell you what it is. I don't want to
Exactly.
say now, and then 6 months later, you're like, but you said you were going to start the thing. So,
But
so
it's good to
let's.
have accountability.
Hey, accountability.
And that's one of the biggest things that I've actually found out, being accountable to certain things,
Yeah.
because um, like okay, I know that we're talking about in our 20s, and in our 20s I found out that once I started having people that hold me accountable to certain things, I actually
Mm,
got them done.
mm.
And yeah, that's been one of the interesting things in life.
It's fascinating. And speaking of your 20s, let's
Yes.
switch gears into the 20s discussion. So, how would you summarize your 20s so far?
My 20s, with summarizing it, would be finding myself, losing myself, finding out that I'm not who I thought I was, but then also knowing that I'm glad for my foundation prior to my 20s, because that was one thing that actually kept me grounded throughout the whole process of finding myself, losing myself, and deciding who am I
Yeah,
now.
yeah, that's quite powerful. It is, but it you couldn't have summarized one's 20s better. I think that's the whole thing. It's like it is that journey of finding
Yeah,
yourself, losing yourself, as you mentioned earlier, the unlearning and then relearning, and then it's like this consistent push and pull and tug of war and tension. That's
yeah.
quite interesting. And have you ever experienced the quarter life crisis? And if you have, what was it?
So I've experienced a lot of crises within my 20s. I think for me, one of the ones that do come to mind is the whole process of the whole weaning process. For me, it was like, so I've had moments where I felt totally alone, even though my family was there. And that whole process of that you actually have to grow up and you are able to do things alone, and that I have to be the one who pushes myself through these moments. Um, Also to realizing that I have anxiety and panic attacks, and how do I actually work with that? Um, I remember once I was at a taxi rank, and I was here in Langa and I was at the taxi rank, and I just thought of I thought of a family member, and I just went into a whole panic. I felt that I couldn't breathe. I wasn't able to think properly, and I just fortunately it wasn't as severe as the one that I had last year. But yeah, it was the first time I'd experienced a panic attack, and I honestly didn't know how to deal with it. Fast forward to last year, where I had literally a breakdown while in a taxi. And the one thing I do remember is that I called on one of my friends, and I was like, yo, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm about to explode. And right now, I just don't know how to handle it. And the person was like, listen, just focus on your breathing.
Yeah.
And I was able to get through that. Though I'm grateful for the fact that I've always made sure that I've got a solid base of friends around me.
Yeah.
And I've made sure that if I'm not okay, I communicate with them. So I'm the type of person, I'll ask you, if we start a conversation, hi, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. How are you? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm okay. And then I'm like, okay, fine. But how are you really?
Yeah.
And then people start to let off and actually have that moment of talking about how they're feeling, and all of that. And I found that having that foundation has helped me also. When I say that, listen guys, I'm not okay, someone is actually does take the time to sit down and be like, okay, cool, what's wrong, what do you think is triggering this, and let's try and find the root. And or here's a way of calming yourself. If you don't want to find the root right now, just here's a way of calming yourself, and you can move forward from there.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe just talking me through your panic attacks. So what happens when you are triggered? What do you go through, from a mentally and physically, what happens? Because I think some people do experience panic attacks, don't know that it is a panic attack, or some people just, they they feel like they're the only ones who are experiencing this overwhelming emotion. So what exactly happens?
So for me, I'd find that I've got shortness of breath, and I wouldn't be able to. I'd feel like I'm searching frantically for something, but I don't know what exactly I'm searching for, and I wouldn't be able to breathe. I feel like crying. I feel like screaming, and I just feel so totally overwhelmed by emotions at that moment. And actually, that day it happened when it happened last year. There was only two people in a taxi, and I was going to Kailija. So I'm fortunate in that there weren't people sitting next to me, because had they been, they would have been like, "Why is this guy crying?" And I think within that point, I probably would have totally just broke down and just lost it. But then the fact that there weren't any there were people, but who were sitting there enough space apart, so it was easier for me to calm down without external people trying to actually figure out what's going on.
And then how do you come out of your panic attack? So you're experiencing it, you're going through it. How do you either talk yourself, or what do you think about to help you overcome the panic attack?
With me, I found that I'd focus on counting and focus on breathing. So I'd breathe slowly, and then count also. But find that counting to 20 forward and then backwards, and then forward and then backwards. it does become tedious after a while. But then the more I focus and do it slowly, the faster the faster my emotions just subside, and I'm able to focus exactly on what is actually wrong. Or I'll call a friend and be like, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why my emotions are just flaring up, but I just need to talk to you. How are you doing? And yeah, just have a conversation with a person, and that calms me. And then sometimes I do go back to looking at what exactly triggered it. At other times, I'm just like, I'm honestly not ready to deal with that. But then I found out that it's always best to deal with it, even though we don't like to. But yeah, the fresher it is, the easier it is to deal with it. Because once it sits and it takes longer, it's kind of like a scar that, like in a wound. So once scabs start to build around the wound, it's much painful when you actually go back to that wound. But when the wound is fresh, you can clean it, you can bandage it, and you can nurse it quite nicely.
Sure. It's sure. It's actually a little bit triggering when you say go back to what triggered it. And I know for me personally, whenever I'm going through any emotional, time, or if I overreact to something, thinking about what triggers it causes even more emotion. And you're like, I don't want to go down that, hole. I don't want to go to that place. And I think I came across a quote, or it was either a quote or a conversation, but it was like, we're so used to highlighting the positive and the good emotions, and we want more of that. But as human beings, we have been blessed with so many emotions, but the negative emotions want to be felt too. And that means going through it, and that means going to that deep place, going to that dark place, and saying, what is the root cause? What is the root issue? And if I don't deal with it now, it's going to keep coming up, and it's going to keep coming back until it is dealt with, until it is acknowledged, basically.
Yeah. And that's the thing, though. Like there are moments that even within our mind we bury these things and these traumas, and years later when it does come up, you're just like, but I didn't think that this happened. I thought that it was just a thought, only to find out it was that traumatic that you buried it within your mind. And once you don't deal with these things, you find that it becomes even harder. So I found out that I actually, if I'm feeling a emotion, I'll let myself feel it and actually be within that space and feel it and be like, okay, cool. I'm angry, but I'm not going to react. So I've also started to try and work more on acting than reacting, because when you react, that's when things go south, because there'll be that emotion, but then there's two. You can either react to it, or you can just be like, okay, cool. How am I going to decide to move forward from this? Or am I just going to react? Because usually us reacting never turns out pretty. It does not.
That's very true. It's very true. And there's something that I actually wanted to ask you on this, or not ask rather, but comment on. I love what you said about also being able to call people, like call some, like, figure out who your point person is, or someone who you can really trust with, being in a vulnerable and emotional space. As I'm assuming, and I know, but I'm assuming because I'm not a guy, but what I've seen and experienced is that women are so they can express their emotions easier. Yes, sometimes it's on the extremes, but we do express a lot and we speak a lot, whereas guys sometimes tend to say, I need to man up and deal with this before I express it. But being in that vulnerable place where you can say, look, I've got my homie, I've got my guy, or my guys who I know I can call and say something's happening, that is absolutely incredible to have.
And so for me, it's become something that I noticed when I was still young. So people would be like, why are you so emotional? Why are you like, and I'm glad that I never dumbed down my emotions or expressing my emotions, because then I don't know what I would be dealing with today. And I would literally say that, listen, this is what I'm going through. And I've always made it a point that I do express that. And then I found that after some time, there would be friends of mine that would be like, listen, I actually appreciate this of you, because now it's taught me to also express my emotions and say that, listen, this is what I'm feeling. And on that, we've built trust and a relationship where we are able to turn to each other and call each other whenever things are going south. So actually within my circle, I've got 2 guys and then I've got a girl that I know that, listen, if everything is going south, they are the ones that I can turn to and call. And usually I'd call first the guys and have the conversations with them, and then call my female friend. But then it's like there is that space that I've created around me.
I really like that. Yeah, I really like that. And then a final question, I guess, just on, some advice that you may have for people in their 20s. It's been such a beautiful conversation around creativity and also your 20s journey. But what final piece of advice would you want to leave with people who are listening to today's conversation?
So if you're listening to today's conversation, or whenever you do get a chance to come across it and you're still within your 20s, I'd suggest that you find something that you wouldn't mind doing at any point in your life. Find that, and then find people who have gone through that journey, and just sit with them and talk to them and follow their footsteps, also within reason of knowing that you can always change and alter it and recreate it to what you envision. Because at the end of the day, your 20s is supposed to be you finding and not you figuring out, but you just finding a path.
Wow.
Because within your 30s going onwards, that's when you actually start to refine your path and be like, okay, fine, from everything that I found out, this is what I'm going to be doing. So your 20s are your research phase.
I know I said that was the last question, and I always do this, but it's just as you're talking, I remember something that I really wanted to ask you about. And it's triggered when you said finding and not needing to have found, but this idea of seeking. And in a prior conversation we had, you spoke about something that happened in the medieval times, where as a 20-year-old, you would actually go under someone's wing and learn a specific craft. Just tell me a bit more about that.
So, I mean, within medieval times, you'd find that you'd have a blacksmith, you'd have different people that specialize in different things. And you'd find that someone would go and spend time. So they wouldn't spend a year or that, they'd spend at least 10 years or even longer under that person's wing, being an apprentice and actually learning the ins and outs of the trade, making a name for themselves. Wouldn't even start until they've left their apprenticeship. So that's a process that we've actually let go of. And you find that you want to now have a finished product right now. Whereas if you take the time to actually go through the whole process and find out what exactly you like, because sometimes you find that within the first 2 to 3 years, you're like, actually, this is not what I'd like to do. And you can drop it and restart again and find exactly what you're looking for. So that whole process, I mean, I wish I had actually that knowledge when I was in my 20s. I'm telling you, I would have started and stopped a whole lot of times. And I mean, that's a nice thing of being within your 20s, though, that you can always start something, you can drop it and start something else, drop it and start something else. And by the time that you reach 30, does not mean that you still have to have figured everything out, because you find that you actually well, I've done all of these things, but here's my first love. Or even going through everything else to realize why exactly you love your first love in the beginning. So you find that that's you so going through everything and making those mistakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, as people, we fear making mistakes. But I keep on looking at children, and especially babies, between the process, when they start crawling to holding on chairs and to walking. I mean, those guys go through the most, and they don't even get it within the first 2 months, but they still keep on that eagerness to wanting to do better. That's one of the best things, and that whole process. So from being on your belly to getting up and crawling, to getting up and taking 2 steps to 3 steps, and within all of those, what do you learn? And you actually your body starts to remember certain things. So when you go through those processes, that's the greatest thing that you could ever do for yourself within your 20s.
Sure. Wisdom. Such great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for making the time for today's chat and discussion. Like, it's been really, really great. I really enjoy these conversations. I'm not going to lie. If someone would just pay me to do this 24/7, I would.